That's pretty amazing in our world.
Welcome, everyone, to a special meeting of the Provo Municipal Council. It is 2:35 p.m. on Tuesday, May 28th, 2019, and we are in the City Center Municipal Council Chambers at 351 West Center Street, Provo, Utah. This meeting is being broadcast live on the web on the Provo City Council YouTube channel, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. The council requests that attendees help maintain the decorum of the meeting by silencing electronic devices, being respectful to others, and refraining from applause or other outbursts during the proceedings of the meeting. We will begin with a roll call. Mr. Strachan?
Cliff Strachan.
Dave Sewell.
Gary Winterton.
Dave Connect.
David Harding.
Kay Van Buren.
George Stewart.
Mayor Kavusi.
Wayne Parker.
We will have an opening prayer offered by Mr. Brett Watson. And following him, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Scott Henderson.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this ability to convene as a government body, and we thank you so much for the wonderful blessings which you provide us in our daily lives. And we ask for your strength and guidance as we go about the decisions for the community, and that we might be able to make the correct decisions and the right decisions as we go forward. And we thank you for the opportunity to do so, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to the both of you. Action agenda item number 1 for today's meeting is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement with Duininck Incorporated to complete East Bay Golf Course improvements. This will be presented by Mr. Scott Henderson, our Director of Parks and Recreation, perhaps a few others. And we are still working on some technical difficulties, so I'm not certain when we will have the
Well, a present without audio visual, puts a lot of entertainment value on us. But as mayor knows, I'm used to this. My first presentation in the mayor's office went about this same way. I'm going to be joined in today's presentation by Brett Watson, golf professional, and also David Walter to talk about the financing of this. We'll maybe give it a moment because we do have some pretty pictures to show, and some of it is pretty relevant into the actual information. So maybe give us a couple moments on a little bit of the technology and see what we can do. If not, we'll try to talk our way through this.
Good afternoon. You know that time when you start shuffling the slideshow in your hand because you think you'll see it on the TV? Okay, so the reason that we're here today is to talk about the additional improvements to the golf course as part of the Norda Medical School campus. As you know, this has been an ongoing discussion and community interaction, I should say, for the past 2 years, and so we're excited to be to this moment. As we have shown in past presentations, as part of this new transition to the new golf course, there were several issues that we felt like could and needed to be addressed as part of the golf course. And so as we were going along, this opportunity with the medical school provided that chance for us to increase the community value at the golf course, add some things that other courses do not have in the area, and frankly, some of them don't have in the state of Utah. One of those being, the first would be a lighted driving range. There is one in American Fork, but the lighted driving range in American Fork is the only one in Utah County, and certainly one of the few in the state of Utah. As part of that, and because of the way that the golf course is situated, we're able to propose lighting the driving range, and while we do that, light out on the same poles and light the executive course, or the short course. In doing that creates something that does not exist in the entire state of Utah, period, and doesn't exist. I know there's one in Las Vegas, and that's about it. And so in doing that, we would have a lighted course, a lighted range. On top of that, we proposed a new golf course, which is one of a kind in the world, really, and it's called Starting New at Golf. And so basically you hit a tennis ball with a big oversized golf club, and it's about a 60-yard hole. Anybody can do it. It's safe, it's family-friendly, it's children-friendly. It introduces the great game of golf to those children that they can then get out. And as I mentioned last time, it's like the bunny hills. So we create our own bunny hills, which golf courses don't have. It's go out there and be an expert golfer or not at all. And so with a lighted range, this lighted short course, and then this lighted Starting New at Golf course, we feel like we can really change the game in the way that golf is thought of. And part of that, and hopefully we have a map up here soon, in the changes in the overall golf course, one of the things, or one of the many things, was I've written down safety hotspot corrections. And one of the issues that we saw is, as we thought it was going to be a lot easier to just take 3 holes out and add 3 holes in, but it proved to be a little bit more difficult than that. For the safety of our golfers, but more importantly, the safety of the medical campus and the cars and everything that's associated with, we've gone in and changed some tee routings and some other things. As part of that, just the overall safety on the golf course. So we might have had a hole that just wasn't designed properly in the 1980s, that whether it's technology or something has changed that. This opportunity has allowed us to go in and update East Bay to a point that, where we want it to be. Another thing is, as you know, we have a lot of water, more water than most. And after 35 years, our bank edges and the erosion control of the soil is something that we would love to address, not only from an aesthetics look, but from a Utah lake and community look. It's really something we're excited about, to be able to fix a couple of these areas. Also on that is just our irrigation system efficiency. We use reclaimed water from the treatment plant, but we are ecstatic about this project because it allows us to use that water in a much better way and a more friendly way to the golf course, to the environment. There's just some things that we can add in as part of this process while we're digging. Another thing on top of that is a more turf-friendly land cap on the landfill. When East Bay was built, and I've mentioned this before, some areas we have 1 inch of soil above the landfill. And so in a lot of those really bad areas, this will allow us to bring dirt in from the medical school project and put it on those areas to make it safer, to grow turf better, to just increase the overall look. As I mentioned, the water and the advanced sustainability, not only does this project allow the golf course to increase revenues tremendously, it also helps us decrease expenses, whether it's time spent mowing or areas that we're working on. It also allows us to use less water in some areas to just make the golf course a little more friendly in general. One of the biggest points I feel about this is it allows us to address issues that are going to arise in the future now. It's a shot in the arm that, frankly, we would have to come back repeatedly to address the bank edges or address the irrigation system. This chance right now with Duininck in place allows us to address all of those issues. The other thing is, if you add something new, the rest is going to look old. And so by being able to create a consistent experience throughout the entire facility with the medical school, with the campus next door, is one thing that we're really excited about too. You're going to have kind of bookends of brand new holes and brand new campus, and in the middle is 35 years old, and we're excited to update that, add all of these new amenities that we've proposed: the lighted driving range, the short course, and the starting new at golf course. And so those are really the things. I have really cool pictures that I hope we can browse through. But I will turn the time over to Scott to finish up.
Brett, before you leave, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Please.
Help me understand the concept of decreasing expenses when we're expanding the use of the golf course. How are we decreasing those expenses? Is it because of better irrigation system, less water?
All of the above. One of the things, if Craig, who our superintendent, is here, when you have that many people, when you're that used and you're trying to mow certain areas, having lights helps. We can get out there in the middle of the night, we can mow that way. Just from a staffing standpoint, someone's not sitting on a mower while 15 people play a hole, and then we got to mow that fairway and come back and forth. Another thing is just the overall efficiency. Right now, our staff and our man hours are spent kind of in project mode and a lot of these things, and having Duininck come in is kind of that main contractor too. They can get stuff done a lot faster than we can. We'd get it done and still have a great golf course, but maybe fixing a sand trap might take Craig 2 weeks. It's going to take these guys 2 days. And so, like I said, it's just kind of that good shot in the arm that just gets us down the road, allows us to focus more on the user experience rather than maybe the control and turf aspects of the golf course, which increases revenue in the long run.
So, but Duininck is not going to be involved in the operations. They're only
No. Just contractors.
Just the contractors for the new part. So,
Correct.
I'm interested in how we're going to stay open longer and spend less money. It's just
We're going to make more money and spend a little more money. Does that make sense?
spend more money because you said decrease expenses, but
Decrease expenses. So let's take this is going to be out there, between holes 1 and 7, where, I don't know if anybody watched the PGA Championship this last weekend or have seen golf courses lately, where you might have a strip of fairway and then some rough grass, and then next to it might be a native area. As part of this proposal is to add several new native areas. Those native areas are pretty much maintenance-free other than the occasional weed spraying, those types of things. So rather than paying or having someone sit on a mower and mow half an acre, that might just be there in tall, wispy grass that blows and stuff like that.
design is going to save us.
The design's going to save us money, certainly, too.
Okay, all right.
Any other ones? Okay.
So Brett vividly described these new facilities, but who benefits from a project like this? And the first that I had on the list was families. And the Starting New at Golf Course, this gets adults and kids participating in a recreational activity together, which recently, especially with young kids, was not something that East Bay, the golf course, provided. These provide a learning opportunity for youth golfers to learn a new sport. And as we've studied how millennials and those coming after millennials are, we've seen that sometimes they're not assembling in the teams, but they are in individual sports. So this allows us to react to that change in the recreation world. We've talked about our benefits to the school district. With this Starting New at Golf and with our short course, we will be able to offer a 5th or 6th grade elementary course as part of their gym classes and be able to have every single student come to East Bay Golf Course and start down the road of learning golf this way. And it's something that the gym teachers have approached us about in wanting to create a connection to this facility. In the high school right now, we just crowned our state champions at Timpview High School, which was a product of East Bay practice. And it's something that with the lights in the evening course, and our athletes are able to train longer in early spring and be able to do some amazing things. The picture that we showed actually showed that state championship steam holding. And it is a great thing to know that the champions are created at East Bay Golf Course, that we can support our youth. We have a tremendous relationship with the universities, UVU and BYU, and offer classes. All those will be done quicker and more efficiently with less impact on the overall course. Let's talk about the economic impact. We had done a full presentation on the events that the golf course is able to attract and what impact having a golf course is towards economic benefit and location. I know I co-presented with the medical school at the Rotary Club, and they both talked about, you know, the benefits of having a golf course in the community, and that the medical school recognized the benefits of being next to a golf course. And so that was something that they understand. And then we talked about the amount of business that is done on the golf course when it comes to sales and trade shows, and we organize many of those events for our community. One thing we've seen in our operations in Provo Parks and Recreation is success through diversity of programming. Is at the peaks, we were fairly successful with ice program, but then we added indoor turf. That all of a sudden got us closer to a self-sustaining facility, and then we were able to make that last jump this last year. So diversity in programming is very important. At the rec center, could there be a more diverse programming plate than what the rec center carries? If we would have just built the rec center just for fitness, probably would not have been as successful as what we see now. But we have something for everyone there. I think East Bay would benefit from that same programming diversity and really make it a valued recreation amenity by the entire community. Does this mean that we have the presentation up? So if you could advance through. Here's some pictures showing the lighted course, showing some of the, you know, the improvements to the overall course that Brett talked about. Maybe keep going, Bryce. There's our state champions. And then this next slide is, we have been through quite a journey together on the development that was proposed for the golf course. And a lot of times, and you guys are involved in much more situations than I am, but we talk about the proverbial win-win solution, but maybe just in my experiences, I have not been able to get there very often. Sometimes there are different opinions that are not able to get. I think this comes as close to the proverbial win-win that you will ever see. It's where a development that is proposed and the proceeds that come from that development, part of those will go back towards the golf course. So we not only get the benefit in Provo City of the medical school development, but the golfers and the golf course receive the benefits also at the golf course. Duininck is an amazing contractor. They have been the contractor on many of the US Open and major courses nationwide. To have them as a player in our course is amazing. And the bid we got is even more amazing from such a talented contractor. If we can keep them working and in place, that is a great thing for the East Bay Golf Course and for Provo City. What it does, it creates something completely unique to Provo. It makes a unique combination of golf development and golf play that you just don't see in the industry. This will be a model of the golf for the future, because I think where golf has fallen off in some ways is that it has not spent enough time on development of the sport, and we are embracing that, and quite frankly always have at East Bay, and that's why East Bay has always been a success story. And a mantra in our department that we go at every decision that we work with is that we really feel Provo citizens deserve the best, and this takes this golf course out to the entire citizenry and really gives them something special and creates a dynamic here that cannot be seen anywhere else. So if there's no questions, I will hand it out, and I know David Walter is really happy, because how can you verbally describe a spreadsheet at this point? But he's going to get up and talk about some of the proposed financing specifics on what we've done. I know David will cover this, but this, from our earlier meetings with the council and with the combined school district, this proposal has gotten better, and I think you'll see that we have listened to what was discussed about first dollar coming to the golf course project and limiting the scope of the tax increment funding. So I think David really has a great story to tell.
You
Yes,
went through
George?
those pictures pretty fast. Can we go through the light at the beginning?
You bet. Okay, so this is the master plan for the golf course, and part of the efficiency, Brett got there, but it really was talking about, less turf and more xeriscape, and you can see there's adding some more of these really decorative, really focusing on the natural space, which is going to make Craig and his crew's job a little bit easier to be able to maintain rather than just a sea of green grass. So this shows some of that. It also shows the 3 mitigation holes, the island hole on the former Cooney property, and also shows a different flow to the course because you change 3 holes, you have to change the numbers and the sequencing on the golf course also.
All the blue water?
There's still a lot of blue water. We're still that great, and it is a tremendous advantage to East Bay that all of our water is, or most of our water is provided by the water treatment plant before it goes. It serves as a great filter before that water goes into the lake. But all that water is still there and present. So, but actually in a lot of the design, Atkinson Design took it to where these shots are more over the water rather than into the water, if I could say. So it's something that it takes the water out of play a little bit more.
Who has the concession to get the balls out of the water?
We have a diver come in, don't we? Yeah, that comes in, and I don't know if we get any kickback on it, or we said if you want them, go ahead, or what do we say there?
They give them back to us at the end. Give them the college students a lot of time.
All right.
I used to lose a lot of water, a lot of balls in the water. Now it's going to be worse, it looks like.
Well, George, I have nothing but confidence in you can hit that island green. It's not a small island green, so we might have a shot at this one. But that's going to be really an exciting element. It's something that it's going to be iconic. It's going to be a picture moment. It's going to have an entertainment and experience value to it. But this is a very different East Bay. And you can see where the medical school buildings are noted on the side. Hot spots are, we've got to make sure that we are not slicing balls into the medical school and the parking lot and all that. So we may have to make sure this design has those elements, and it does. It has an entire lake between us and the medical school. That would be the new one, and that is the existing 13. So excited. Then you also see around the dual lighting of both the driving range and the outside looking at the short course and the starting new at golf course right around there, allowing us to have one staff member making $10 an hour being able to operate a course for an extended 3-4 hours in the evening after the sun goes down. So Gary, that's where a lot of efficiency comes in too, extending our business hours with a low overhead. This is the type of lighting that we were looking at. When we first looked at it, the first pricing was lighting it like Yankee Stadium, and we don't think that's necessary. If you're able to follow your path and follow it to the landing zones, that you'll be able to, with this amount of lighting, be able to create a great experience out there. So this shows what our goal is in the lighting level. We think it even has a much more attractive feel to it also. This is starting new at golf. Definitely a step above mini golf, but and I know I've seen some of our loyal users, but Brent Edgington, who's here today, always talked about one of the joys he finds when he shows up to the course is seeing young kids coming out and playing and out at the course and on the driving range. Because I think the golfers that really get it understand that the future of golf may not be them, but the future of golf is the next, and they know what a great activity it has been for them, and they'd love to be able to share that. And I think this is that bridge program. First thing we all have to get over before we golf is the anxiety about walking on the golf course. Am I good enough? How do you make a tee time? Where do you go? All those type of things. If we can start eliminating those things, then we have won at this activity center.
So, learning how to golf is great, but I could see this particular snag course where it would just be kind of a date affair where you go and it's more fun than miniature golf.
Yeah, I think the most people are just going to come out for a good time. You know, it's like public skating at the peaks. A lot of people come just for the skating, but if we get them to enjoy the sport and like it, there's a side benefit to that continued use too. But you're absolutely right. This opens up the course and that whole facility to a group that normally would not consider East Bay in their recreation activity. So you're absolutely right. These are some of the future designs looking at approach shots and how they lay out. We really have an excellent designer, somebody that really knows how to make a difference in existing courses and renovations. And so being able to make some of those ideas that really make the course both challenging, our championship course, and something that is very playable and keeping us out of the water also. There's our team. So I'll hand it over now to David Walter, and he can go over some of the financing specifics, and obviously we're here for any questions afterwards too.
Council Chair, members of the council, good afternoon. So you have seen this particular version before. So this is the survey area, and we've gone through a number of iterations since then. So what we are proposing now is that instead of putting everything in this light green into a project area, we would put just the, okay, I don't know what color that is, but I can see 6 colors if I'm lucky, and my wife is standing beside me. So, but the project area now would be just this, and this corresponds with the housing component that the developer has requested. So this would be approximately 736 apartment units. I believe you have seen some of those renderings in other meetings. And based on the numbers that we have received from the developer for the values, these are the current property values. As you'll remember, the school district kind of wanted to see even though the property is transferred from the city to a private entity, the value has not been put on the tax rolls, and the school district was interested in seeing that on the tax roll before they proceeded. Now it's not so much a concern because we're no longer going to be putting the project area on this piece. So, yeah, I don't know if it's better, but it's a little more colorful now. We have looked at this, and so based on the values, which we have gotten from the developer, you can see in year 1, year 3, they make improvements to the property, and then it goes up at 2% per year after that. And we're proposing to split the tax increment with the developer, where the city would keep 75% of the tax increment for 6 years, and that would get us to the $2.3 million. And then after that, the developer would then keep the rest, they would keep a portion of the tax increment. It's not being shown here on this, but they would keep a portion, 25% of the tax increment. I think it's also important to point out that this is also after we have passed through portions of the tax increment to the county, to the school district. The city is keeping a portion, as well as, because it's a new project area, we now have a statutory requirement to have a housing set-aside component. And those numbers are in each one of here. They're reflected here on the housing allocation line. So it's listed as a negative because we're taking that piece out, and it gets totaled up down here on the bottom. So as the years progress, we get some more money that we can have for workforce housing available within the city of Provo. But we are estimating that we can reach the $2.3 million after 6 years, at which point we would drop out of the equation altogether. The developer would then keep accruing tax increment for 10, maybe 12 years, depending on whatever the other taxing entities feel like. Typically, the school district goes for 12 years. Yes, Mr. Van Buren?
12 years overall, not
12, correct. It's not an additional 12 years. So for the first 6 years, we split it, and for the next 4 or 6, depending on how it's structured, they get it. all of it. And so what we're estimating is based on the values that they've told us they're going to build and deducting out the base year, that the tax increment would, over a 6-year period, would get to the $2.3 million. So this is an estimation of the value for the medical school. And since we are not proposing to put a tax increment area on this, and what you really can't see on this, this particular project is that this would be, you can start to see that the city's going to start collecting in the third year when they put in the first $52 million. This county, the school district will start receiving. And the important thing about this is that this is all net new taxes that the taxing entities will receive. Because this property has previously been owned by the city, they have not, no one has been getting any taxes off this property. And so now with the transfer, they will start to accrue taxes and they'll see an immediate benefit in addition to this proposed pass-through agreement here, where we're saying that, that we're going to the pass through 25% to the county, 25% to the school district, pass through an additional 5% plus the housing allocations that are coming out. And even with those, we're still estimating that we will get to the $2.3 million within 6 years. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I don't know if you have any questions on the tax increment. So again, it's we had gone through several versions of this. This version keeps it solely confined to the former Nature Sunshine piece, which is that going to be the portion that they build the housing. Because they're putting in the 736 units, that gets us to a value that we estimate will be able to provide a tax increment flow that'll help us pay for some of these enhancements, as well as pay for some of the improvements that the developer is going to have to do to the property. So,
just one moment. So we've now had a presentation on both the golf course improvements as well as a proposal on the finances. Would it be appropriate to read in the second item? I get the feeling that we're getting a presentation on both of them up front.
I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, so let me just read in that the second item. It appears that we'll vote on these separately, but it looks like we'll be discussing these together. Is there a complication because one requires a public hearing, and the other does not?
Well, I don't think so in the sense that you're going to anticipate you're going to open them both up for public comment, so.
Okay.
Should be fine.
So item number 2, which we are also considering at this time, is a resolution appropriating $2,286,354 in the golf course fund for the East Bay Golf Course improvements, applying to fiscal year ending June 30, 2019. All right. Did we have questions for any of the presenters?
Did you say that the county and the school board have seen this yet?
yes, so
Have they voted on that?
they have not voted on it. There has been a willingness on, I apologize for being slightly late, but I had a meeting with both Commissioner Lee and Ms. Stephanie Bryant of the school board prior to coming here. So Ms. Bryant has indicated that the school board's supportive of this and had asked if there was a draft agreement that we could bring to them for their consideration. I think we're a little premature in that, but so she is going to go back and talk in June. They're going to go back and talk about this and give a little more definitive response for our consideration. I've met with Commissioner Ainge as well as Commissioner Lee, and they're both willing to consider it. They didn't come out and commit. Obviously, I couldn't ask them to do that but they're willing to consider the project. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to meet with Commissioner Ivey. That's later on this afternoon. So.
I have a question for you. It looks like we'll be collecting this money over 6 years. But I imagine the expenses will be in a quicker time frame. So how are we bridging that?
So I think that's the reason for the second item on your agenda this afternoon. We're asking to appropriate $2.2 million to make these improvements, and then we're proposing to repay, it's coming from the Economic Development Fund? Yes. So we're appropriating it from the Economic Development Fund to the golf course fund, and then we would repay the Economic Development Fund over the 6-year period with this funding.
So where it says resolution appropriating this amount in the golf course fund, so that's putting money into the golf course fund, is that correct?
That is, yes, sir, that's my understanding.
And coming from economic development funds?
Yes, sir, that is my, I can
Please.
defer to the expert.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, it's going to be a year, over a year, before we're going to actually have housing units that are built, and that we'll be collecting property tax on those. And so that's one of the reasons why we're showing it as a 7-year loan rather than a 6-year loan. And the approval, the recommendation is to do an interfund loan for $2,029,396, and then it would be from the Mountain Vista Fund, and those funds are a result of money that's been collected from the sale of property at Mountain Vista, with the intent of paying it back at an interest rate of 3% over 7 years. And then there's $256,958 that we would be short based on what's needed to do this project, and so we're recommending that we do an appropriation, actually a transfer from the general fund to the golf course fund, and include that in the appropriated balance in the golf course fund for the $2,286,000. And so that's the, I don't know if that's clear or if I can answer any questions.
And so that 200,000 plus, is that part of this motion, or is that just expected?
It's part, the resolution and the appropriation that was noticed basically just states that we're appropriating $2,286,384 out of the golf fund, and we're transferring $256,958 out of the general fund, and we're recommending an interfund loan for the $2,029,396.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
John, maybe you could answer, how often have we done tax increment to where we're financing a city project rather than a private project or a project out? We've done a number of them since I've been on the council, but I can't remember ever doing a tax increment to finance a city project. Is that common, rare, or?
Have to just ponder over that for a minute and think about some of the projects. You know, haven't done a lot of tax increment projects, but this is, for improvements. But I don't know, Wayne, are you familiar?
The only ones I can think of, council member, there were two that that financed public improvements associated with an economic development project. The mall would have been a good example, where we paid to build the ring roads at the mall, and those came out of tax increment. That's publicly owned infrastructure. We did the same thing with the auto dealerships on University Parkway, where we built roads, utilities that supported that, and were used for other developments along the way. Probably the most analogous one would actually be what we did with the Covey Center, when we financed $1 million out of the Covey Center, so tax increment was indirect there because we actually used revenues from sale of property at Mountain Vista to help support the improvements to the Covey Center for the Arts. But we also had tax increment that was flowing back into that fund, so it was a little less direct. I can tell you it's not that uncommon across the state to see these kinds of things happen. And again, this was one where we felt like it just made a lot of sense because we were impacting the golf course by the relocation of the 3 holes. And the tax increment flow would allow us to actually take that golf course improvement to a much higher level. And that was kind of the intent behind this one. So it's not super common, but it's not all that unusual either.
And we're not putting ourselves in a position of being in the wrong or being...
Yeah, well, and again, that's the beauty of a community development area is the taxing entities who are giving up the taxes have to be convinced of the value of the project. And in this case, we feel confident that the taxing entities will be there based on our conversations with them.
Thank you.
What are we giving up by taking these funds out of the Economic Development Fund for 7 years? What are we changing with that?
I think it has to do more with timing. You know, as we look at those funds, I don't believe there's any, and Dixon would probably be the best one to answer this. Wayne may also be able to, or the mayor, but the intent is to pay those funds back, and so it would just be a timing issue. I know that there's additional funds that are going to be coming in through the sale of the property over the next year, and so primarily it's timing. The other thing that as I mentioned, it's a 3% loan, which is a little bit higher than what we're getting out of the state pool right now, and so the fund will continue to have those funds grow with interest, and so that was kind of the biggest thing.
But you don't see any project that we're having to delay necessarily. Have we got this funding earmarked for anything, I guess, that...
Well, one of the things that we did is we did a little bit of a forecast, and one of the things that you're probably familiar with is that there's a plan over in Mountain Vista to build an additional road, right. And we've got some matching funds that we need to provide so that can be done, and this accounts for those matching funds, and it accounts for needs over the next time, and so we felt good about it and felt like we'd still be able to accomplish what we need to do over there.
Because that road is not going to be built for a little while, and we feel that we'll be able to get those funds back before, but the road was going to be built soon.
No, I believe the road's going to be built starting in the fall.
Yeah,
and we're planning on that. We have based on what we expect to sell in property, and we have some proceeds coming up just in the next month to 2 months. We're confident we'll be able to do the road as well as the matching on the road. Good question. Yes.
So we have a cap on the amount of TIF that will go to the golf course. It's the 2.3 million.
That's correct.
Is there also a cap on and this may be for Mr. Walters, but is there a cap on the private portion? Has that been worked out yet? I think you were saying there's a certain number of years, but usually we have both a years as well as an amount.
Correct. And so what we are doing right now is we're talking with the school district as well as the county about what the appropriate cap is going to be. So typically the school district likes no longer than 12 years. So we've got that built in there. And then we're based on those values. There's a maximum dollar amount that we would participate in.
But David, in terms of the money going to the medical school developers, there was a time cap and a dollar cap, right, in our original agreement with them.
Right. So we were talking about just about whatever it took to get them to about 3.2 million.
It was to essentially recover the cost of acquiring the Nature Sunshine piece for their property, and it's capped at that dollar amount, or I think it's 12 years, whichever comes first.
Yes.
Right. So again, the more they build and the faster they build, the quicker they will be able to recoup their land investment from the Nature Sunshine piece. And that was where the tax increment deal was structured in part of our land acquisition process with them. The real estate purchase agreement that had been approved by the council last year.
And yet, as I'm reviewing this, we are not actually voting on that today. Today, we are just voting to authorize the mayor to execute this agreement for the improvements, as well as appropriating the money.
So the council's taken the first step, which is approving the survey area, so for the project area. So that has been done, and there will be subsequent items that will be brought before you where we will scale that back to just the Nature Sunshine or the housing component, whichever whichever frame of reference you prefer to use. That'll be the only portion that'll be subject to the TIF. And then everything else in the medical school, when they develop within the next 3 to 5 years, all of that will be new taxes that will be received by the taxing entities, including the county, the city, the school district, and the waterworks, the water district board.
Thank you. Any other questions for?
I've supported the golf course through this whole project, and my support's still there. I'm concerned about the payback process. Have we investigated other ways to pay that money back?
We've had long discussions about that, council member. I think we are confident that we could identify a solution should none of this work. But by the same token, we also think we've done at least all the due diligence we can do with the taxing entities up to this point, and have a very high confidence level that this will work. We're comfortable with the cost estimates that have been provided by the developer to build this number of units of residential. We think the numbers are, clearly in the realm of probability. So we're not worried about that. We feel confident, though, that if there is some hiccup in the process, that we'll figure out a solution, and we'll come back to you if that's necessary. But we have a very, very high confidence level that what we propose to you will work.
My struggle is we're taking tax money of people who don't play golf and using it to improve our golf course, when we know that, let's see, I want to say this delicately. There have been funds from Parks and Recreation that could be used for this instead of going somewhere else.
Totally understand that concern. I think it is worthy to note, though, that the taxes which are being generated for the increment are being paid for by the owners of the golf course. Now, granted, those dollars could be flowing to the city generally, but I understand what you're saying in terms of surplus revenues from Parks and Recreation activities. But again, I think part of our concern is that we could do that and then receive the tax increment, or the value of the tax increment back into the general fund. But we think this is actually, I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's a risk trade-off. And again, in our mind, we had reached the threshold of saying we were going to provide some tax increment financing to acquire the Nature Sunshine piece. But given the higher density levels of this housing that's been proposed to support the medical school, we can actually do both with the same increment we were proposing to use before. And it seemed like that was a pretty elegant solution without having a direct impact to the general fund. So that was our thinking behind trying to do this. I totally understand where you're coming from, but I do think it's a reasonable proposal. And again, we've limited the tax increment only to the housing part, not to the medical school. And so all of those dollars will be flowing directly to the taxing entities without going through a tax increment deal. So again, we felt like it was a pretty elegant solution, and it got us to be able to do the entire project all at once, as opposed to piecemealing it over several years.
One last question. What is the chance of, when they're ready to build medical school and the other improvements on that property, that they'll come back to us for a tax increment on that property? Or is there anything in our contract that says we're done with tax increment?
Yes. Yeah. So in our agreement, the tax increment generated for the medical school is limited only to the Nature Sunshine parcel. And so anything we talked about going beyond Nature Sunshine would have been for the golf course, not for the medical school. So given that they've constrained their tax increment request to the Nature Sunshine parcel, there's no possibility without, again, coming back. Could certainly ask.
Redoing it, right.
They could certainly ask, but again, that was the negotiated deal, which has already been approved by the mayor and council, and that the golf course is subject, the medical school is subject to.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our presenters? I do have one final one. I believe it may be for Mr. Watson, or whoever else you would like to have answer this. So there are several aspects to the improvements that I think that I'm just learning about with this, and one of which is the adding soil to better cap the landfill, which I think is a great thing. I do know that there has been some concern about having the sod in place on the 3 new holes to make sure that it's playable. It seems to me if we're adding additional soil to cap, is there any concern that that's going to affect the playability of the course while that's happening or shortly after that happens?
So the best way to describe it is the soil that's being taken from where the island is going to be built. It's about a 15-foot deep lake that's around that island. In an effort to save the medical school on costs of them having to ship it somewhere, we thought, well, we've got some really bad areas that we would love to take that to. Fortunately for us, several of those bad areas are off to the side or out of play or in really easy access areas that a dump truck can come in and out. We can shorten a hole for maybe a week or 2. They're in, they're done, and they're gone. So a lot of the design that you saw in that master planning was how do we keep an 18-hole golf course open, build all these new improvements in these new areas, and then just kind of move in like we added a wing onto the house. And that's one thing that Atkinson has done a very good job of, is understanding that we can't close where a lot of courses would close in this type of situation, but we're going to stay open and provide the best golf course that we can for everyone. So yeah, it's a win-win again for both sides. Medical school can lose their dirt a lot easier, and we get to fix a lot of those areas that frankly still have methane coming out of them. So
okay,
that answer.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, we will now open both item 1 and item 2 to the public for comment. Item 1, well, I'll start with item 2. Item 2 is required for a public hearing by state law, but we will also take comment at this period on item 1 if anyone would like to address the council on either of these 2 items. And if you'll begin with your name and city of residence.
Sure. My name is Randy Dodson. I'm the communication and marketing consultant for the Utah Golf Association and the Utah Section PGA. I own Fairways Media and publish Fairways Magazine, formerly here in Provo, but have since moved our office to Orem. I just, as one who was concerned of the negotiations with the medical school earlier, even to the point of being critical of the process, I now want to stand before you and thank you, Mayor and Wayne and City Council, for reaching this point of a win-win situation that we can maintain a treasure of Utah County and of Provo City and East Bay Golf Course and still get the business side of what you're doing done. You have also now set a precedent that other city councils can look at when they face this same issue with their city golf course. So thanks to you for reaching this point. And Brett, Scott, congratulations on the work that you've done. And that's what I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson.
So my name is Tommy Rosenval. I'm a Provo resident. I'm a senior at Timpview High School and an avid golfer at East Bay. I spoke a while back, I think it was almost 2 years now, when this whole thing first came up. And I've seen a lot, I've followed it. And I just want to say thank you for finding the win-win out of the situation. At times, I was a little nervous, but I just want to say thank you on behalf of all the youth. I know this is the right decision and that it will benefit the people of Provo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal.
My name is Brent Edgington. I'm a Grandview resident of Provo, and former member of the Parks and Rec Board, and was quite outspoken against what was going on originally, and also echo the sentiments of these two gentlemen. Thank you for making this right. There's nothing more exciting for me than to go out on a golf course and see young kids out there, particularly those kids that are out there with their parents. And I think it's a great savings in the long term. If you look at the other options those kids may end up with, I think we save ourselves as a community a lot of grief when we give those kids something constructive and fun to do and uplifting, and I thank you for making this decision.
Thank you, Mr. Edgington. Any other comment? Seeing none, we will close this public hearing and bring it back to the council for discussion. Let's begin with a discussion on item number 1, which is the authorization for the mayor to execute the agreement for the improvements.
I'm just thrilled that we have the opportunity that we've got to get this done. This is a unique opportunity, I think, for us as a city to be able to afford Duininck, and I think I'm excited for this to go forward.
Well, let me express my gratitude along with the public for all those who have been a part of this and have gotten us to this situation where it sounds like pretty much everyone in the community is at least comfortable, and many are very excited about the opportunities. I think this is a great example of many individuals throughout the community working together. This was not always an issue where everyone was smiling about. There were some concerns and differences of opinion, and I think this is an example of when we work together with our common objective of doing what's best for the community. I think this is the kind of good outcome that comes from people working in good faith with trust and being willing to disagree and push each other and look for the best situation. And I can't say enough about our golf team and our Parks and Rec, and the administration has just done wonderfully on this. So and the public for being willing to come out and express the concerns, and we're willing to let us work through it as well, and paid attention and kept helping us find the solution. So thanks to everyone involved, and I plan on supporting both of these motions.
Mr. Chairman, if I just might, a 2:30 council meeting on a Tuesday afternoon is pretty unusual. Part of our concern here is that we face a very tight time frame of getting these improvements done and sod in place this season, and our contractor indicated to us that every week we go, it gets less and less likely that we'll be able to get this done. And so we felt it was worth asking you for a special meeting at an unusual time simply to get the project underway. And so just for those who might be wondering why we're doing a special meeting at 2:30 on off Tuesday, it's really all about trying to get the project under contract and underway, so that we can meet our timeframes as well as the medical school's timeframes. And so we appreciate your indulgence at letting us schedule a special meeting on this topic.
Just out of curiosity, for the council, have we discussed Duininck and their resume and the things that why you chose them? Have you talked? Has the council ever done that, or has that come to Parks and Rec, the Parks and Rec Board? I can't remember. Where I've heard this and why we chose them.
So bid selection, especially former bid selection, is not just cost. It's references and it's talent, and it really goes all into that on who we want to associate with. And then that's where some of these discussions have happened with our board as we have been able to get these bids from this highly qualified firm that that has such a resume of national courses that where the highest levels of tournaments are being held at. So we found out about this through the bid process, and obviously Duininck's reputation. When we saw the name in the bid, you know, we were excited about that, but can you imagine how excited we were seeing that type of reputation and the actual low bidder too. So that was the perfect combination in bid for us. And we wrote up in our department kind of a resume showing some of the clubs and the golf courses that they have worked on, and really it really puts them in the best of the best category.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Sewell.
I'm really excited about this. I heard the word win-win mentioned several times, and it really feels like that's what we have here. If you look at the project as a whole, I think it's a win for the business community and for our economic development. It's a win from an educational standpoint, having a medical school here, and it's a win for the golf community as well, having a facility that sounds like in some respects is going to be best in class in the whole state. So I noted that we had several people who were concerned about moving ahead originally that are feeling very good about where we ended up, and that's always good to see. I really like the idea of attracting more youth and families to the project. I think that's wonderful. I just really appreciate our Parks and Rec department, who has really shown a track record of innovation and anticipating facilities that are going to be loved and well used by our community. And that's, I feel like we've got another home run in the making here. And I appreciate the thought towards efficiency as well as part of this. And seems like our Parks and Rec has a really good track record with that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. If there's no other comments or discussion, I will call for a vote on the implied motion, which is to authorize the mayor to execute the agreement with Duininck to complete the East Bay Golf Course improvements. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Yes. And with George Handley excused. And now item number 2, I think much of our comments apply to both items. Are there any comments or any discussion on item number 2 before we vote?
I've been struggling with this for a while, and I appreciate, David, your work in changing the program a little bit to guarantee the money of the course first and help that. And there's been a lot of work done. Thanks, Scott and Brett and Mayor and Wayne. Thank you. I'll be supporting this and voting for this and hoping it'll go forward and hoping the weather will cooperate so golf will be played next spring. I also hope that we'll stay diligent to the agreements that have been made as we go forward with the building of the medical school and facilities and the functioning of the golf course, and that it's a win-win right now, that it will continue to be a win-win down the road. And so I will be supporting this today.
Thank you, Mr. Van Buren, and I'll second those comments. Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call for a vote on the implied motion on a resolution appropriating $2,286,354 in the Golf Course Fund for East Bay Golf Course improvements, applying to the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. All those in favor? That's unanimous with George Handley excused. If there is no objection, we will now adjourn this meeting by unanimous consent.